And without further ado, please welcome Wilfred de Vries.
Well, good morning, everybody. Or actually, I should say good afternoon to you all in Asia. First of all, Anders, thank you for the introduction and having me today for the webinar presentation. The webinar presentation is titled "A New Generation of Delta4 Phantom Plus," called the Delta4 Phantom Plus MR. And today I will topic the developments, the acceptance, and the clinical results as far as we got them now in Utrecht. First of all, some disclosures. Parts of the research and the presented work is supported and/or partially financially funded by either Scandidos, by Electa, and or Philips. And I have to stress out that I'm not an employee of one of the mentioned companies, nor do I have any financial benefit from them. So first of all, a short introduction. For myself, like Anders said already, I'm since 2011, I'm a clinical physicist engineer at Utrecht. And before that, I've been for more than over 10 years an RTT in the Netherlands in the 3 hospitals in The Hague, in Groningen, and in Utrecht. And I started off with a study in medical and biological chemistry, where I had my bachelor degree. Utrecht, where are we situated? We're quite far away from one another, as you can see in this Google map. If you see in the upper left corner, you see two of those blue points, where the most left is Utrecht, and the upper one is in Uppsala, where the headquarters of Scandidos is situated, and where actually Anders is right now. And as you can see, I've pointed out some countries in the Far East, where I've heard from Yang that at least we will have some attendees from China, from Taiwan, from Korea, from Thailand, from Singapore, and sorry if I forgot to mention your country if it is not in my list, but you're welcome. So actually, Utrecht, where are we situated? This is an overview of Europe, and as you can see over here in the north, there's Uppsala, and over here in the roughly center, there's the Netherlands with Utrecht pointed out. So Utrecht is in the center actually of the Netherlands itself, and it's very close to Amsterdam. It's about 25 minutes train ride, where most of the people know where Amsterdam is. And if I say I'm from Utrecht, they look at me and say, "You're from where in the Netherlands?" I made a small comparison just, and I know this list is not completely from Utrecht into or compared to some big cities in the Far East. It's Kaohsiung, it's Beijing, Singapore, Seoul, and Hong Kong. And in the beginning, I thought, oh, Utrecht, it's quite a big city. But when I wrote down the numbers, it turned out it isn't. We only have 350,000 citizens, where all those cities are far larger and have citizens numbers of in millions. Also, I looked at what's the highest building, and in Utrecht we have the Dome Tower with 112 meters. And when I'm standing at that tower, I already thought, oh, that's high. But then I looked into all the other numbers, and I thought, oh, we're actually pretty small at this moment. So in the UMC Utrecht, I'm working at the radiotherapy department, and it's situated on the east side of Utrecht at this blue dot. And if we look into the University Medical Center, it is quite a large complex with all kinds of hospitals. We do have the main medical center. We do have a children's hospital. We do have a children's hospital for oncology. We do have a military hospital over there. So it's quite a big hospital. And they are working around 15,000 employees at the UMC in Utrecht. And here you can see an overview of the whole medical center. The radiotherapy department itself is situated in the far right white buildings. So this is actually the radiotherapy department, and I'm sitting in one of those white offices over here. If I look into radiotherapy department in Utrecht, I made a summary of how large we are and how much colleagues I do have. We do have 10 linear accelerators, 3 Unity MR-Linacs, it's all Electas. We do have 3 MR sims, 2 1.5 and 1 3 Tesla machines made by Philips, 2 CT sims. We do have a brachytherapy and an auto voltage machine. And to run all these equipment, I got colleagues of different, like saying 24 radiation oncologists. We got 16 trainees. We got 16 radiotherapy physicists and around 125 radiotherapy technicians. And as we are a medical university medical center, we do have around 40 PhD and master students at this moment. On a yearly basis, we treat around 4,500 to 5,000 patients a year, and that's only for the region of Utrecht. Then I will give you a short overview of the MR-Linac. I can of course give you a large overview and I will talk for, let's say, 2 hours, but I'll keep it short. Myself, I'm working with the Unity MR-Linac system from Elekta. It's a 1.5 Tesla MRI equipped with a 7 MV linear accelerator where the focus isocenter distance is 133.5 centimeters. We can treat up to a field size of 57.4 times 22 centimeters. And as you can see, the Unity system has a cylindrical geometry. It's equipped with a 70 centimeter bore, and the radiation is perpendicular to the magnetic field, where the magnetic field is within the bore length. This is a schematic overview of how it looks if you open up and remove all the covers. So here you can see the bed where the patient is laying, and the bed is placed into the bore, and there's a large ring around it, where on that ring your magnetron, your waveguide, your collimator is all situated, and the treatment beam is irradiating through the cryostat and treating the patient. I know there is, of course, another MR-Linac system called the MRldian. It's made by Furay. I don't have any experience with that, but I know that they sold a lot of those machines. And to give you the key specifications on that, it's a 0.35 Tesla MRI. It has a 6 MV linear accelerator, where in the past they equipped it with 3 cobalt sources. And they do have a focus isocenter distance of 90 centimeters, and their maximum treatment field size is 27.4 times 24 centimeters. So it's a bit smaller than what we can treat on the Unity machine. It also has a cylindrical geometry, and the bore diameter is the same as on the Unity machine, where also the radiation is perpendicular to the B field. Then I will head now to the main topic of this webinar, which is the Delta4 Plus MR. And like said, I only have experience with the Unity, so I will share the development process, the acceptance, and the clinical results, which I did on that machine. First of all, the development. The Unity machine, the development already started in 2000 with an ID from Jan Lagendijk. sitting at his desk and having a conversation and talking about, will it be possible to treat patients while they are laying in the MR? So it was on paper and they had a lot of thoughts about it. And then in the end, in around 2008, 2009, we had a prototype of the now called Unity machine. As you can see on the upper right corner, it's all made of wood, and the electrical wiring is still there. There was no light in the bore, so if you would place a phantom in there, you had to dive into the bore, place your phantom actually in the darkness, and with imaging you had to see if you were in the right spot. The table you had to push in yourself, so it wasn't motorized at all, so it was really a prototype at that moment. But at that time, a colleague of mine, Jochem Wolthaus, he was already thinking, the idea is good, we can irradiate, but how well can we irradiate? So he did some film dosimetry and he compared the TPS dose with the dose that he got on film. And as you can see in the gamma map, in the dose difference map, sorry for this, as you can see, he went up to, let's say in the high dose region, errors around 2 to 3%, which is actually good for such a prototype. No patients were treated at this moment, of course. Another colleague of mine, Annette Houweling, already in 2016, was, after that Jochem proved that he could irradiate with such high precision, she was thinking, but are there any phantoms on the market? It was already there was already a magnetic field of 1.5 Tesla, and she looked at the market, and there was only actually at that time in 2016 one phantom, and it's called the Sun Nuclear Arc Check, which was able to collect data in an MR field. She did research on that, and she found out that for 19 patients, she found an average gamma pass rate of 98.4% with standard deviation of 1.7%. It's pretty reasonable. As you can see, if you compare the measured dose with the TPS dose, it's well in agreement. And she published it in 2016 in PMB. Also, it's still the prototype, so no patients were treated at this moment. And then in 2016 as well, I went to the guys from Scandidos and said, is it possible to make an MR compatible Delta4? And they said, oh yeah, maybe we can. And in good cooperation, we started off this project. And at that time, we had that now old Delta4 PT, and we looked at it and said, oh, what's the starting point? And we said, oh yeah, we have to remove all the ferromagnetic parts from the phantom. That's your first step. And as you can see on the right picture, the feet of the phantom have gone, so those were turned out to be ferromagnetic. The end plates, which covered up the electronics, that turned out to be ferromagnetic as well, so we removed those as well. And then it turned out that it was safe to put into a 1.5 Tesla MR field. Still at that time, no patients were treated. Then in 2018 already, we were still on prototype with that PT phantom. Like, as you can see in the right picture, we got a lot of extension cables, and people who worked with the old PT will recognize that the connection box is still present, as well as the network hub, which is laying on the floor. And 2018, it turned out that it worked. So then I did a characterization of the prototype for the MR compatible Delta4, and I published it in PMB as well. At that time, 2018, so only 2 years ago, Scandidos came up with the Delta4 Plus, and to have one unique portfolio, we said, oh, if we have proven that we can do it with the PT, maybe we can do it with the Delta4 Plus as well. So we started off with a prototype of the Delta4 Plus, and as you can see, there are still a lot of extension cables. The electronics are with tape glued to the table, so it will not fly in, so it's detached from the Phantom itself. So we took it all actually apart from one another. At that time, 2018, we started to do patient treatment, but since this was still a prototype of the Delta4 Plus MR, we didn't want to rely on that. So actually we did a 2D film analysis for the patient treatment. And 2019, in the end, Scandidos had a CE labeling and an FDA approval for the Delta4 Plus MR. All the electronics are nicely worked into the Phantom, and now there is a Delta4 Plus which is MR compatible. I like to stress out that you can use it on a Unity machine as well as on a regular linear accelerator, because some people think that if you do have a Delta4 Plus MR, you can only use it on a Unity or on an MRldian machine. That's actually not the case. You can use it on both machines, as we do, because the right picture is actually one of our newest linear accelerators here in Utrecht. But then I will take you into what are the challenges for QA in our field. Where did we have to work out? What did it take so long to get a Delta4 Plus MR? First of all, I have to tell you that it's actually not those photons which are affected by the magnetic field, but it's the electrons which will be released by the photons. Since those are charged particles, and they do see influence of the magnetic field, and the Lorentz force is applied to them. So therefore, their local dose deposition will change, and that's already published in 2009 by Meising. So, and that does actually affect your patient dose and therefore your QA measurements. Then the question is, how does it affect it? If we look into a point spread kernel of a 6MV beam with no magnetic field applied, if you put in your beam from on top and you put it into some kind of medium, your point spread dose distribution will look like this. But if I apply a magnetic field to that same kernel, your electrons will, due to the Lorentz force, bend to the right, and therefore your kernel will bend to the right. So actually your whole dose distribution is shifted in that way. In 2008, Bas Rijmakers found already out that if you do this, it's depending on which energy your electrons do have, how large that shift is, as you can see on the left picture. And in 2018, we already had a water tank which we can position in the bore of the Unity machine, and then Simon Woodings created profiles to put it into the treatment planning system, and he found out that if you make an inline profile of the 6MV beam, it's quite symmetrical, but if you do it in crossline mode, you will see that there is a shift to the right, and that's due to the Lorentz force that bends the electrons to the right. That was not the only thing. If you look, for instance, into a standard PDD, which I graphically made in the picture below, you can see that if you apply a 1.5 Tesla field to that PDD, due to the shift of the electrons, your dose maximum will shift to the left in your PDD, and you will get a higher entrance dose. If that was only the thing we had to challenge, that would be pretty easy, because you can model that in a TPS system and you can calculate with it and you can take that into account. But there's actually more, because if you do have, and Sarah Hackett found that and published it, that if you have an air gap around your ion chamber, and actually it's not only ion chambers, it's accounted for diodes as well. If you do have an air gap around it, depending on the size of the air gap, you can get those effects up to 2.5% in difference. And the way to overcome this is to get rid of the air gaps, and that's mainly done by filling up with material and most likely water around your ion chamber. So if we do absolute dosimetry, we do it in a water phantom, so then there is no air around your ion chamber. And then myself, I found out with doing the characterization of the prototype Delta4 that there is an actually angular sensitivity of the detector arrays, and it can give deviations up to 11%. And first of all, I was thinking, up to 11%, that's pretty large, and where is this coming from? And then I took a CT scan from the main board of the Delta4, and it turned out that there is actually small air gaps around those diodes, and those are mainly causing the deviation in the diode reading. And then the last challenge you have to face if you do it on a QA on a MR-Linac is if you have small off-axis fields. In the left picture you can see, and that's the easiest one, if your high dose target of your high dose region is within the center of the phantom, you can place your phantom in the center and you can just measure it. But since on the MR-Linac you can shift your or you have to shift your high dose region sometimes due to the fact that you want to treat a kidney or something which is more to the left or the right of the patient, it can turn out that the high dose region will be more to the left of the right in the phantom itself, and then you have to place your phantom off center. That's actually quite a challenge, and someone who is working on a normal linear accelerator would say, why? Because then you would shift your table, but actually that's not possible on a Unity machine. It can only move into the bore in a longitudinal direction, but you can't shift it laterally. Then I will take you shortly into the acceptance of the Phantom. We did a lot of testing on the Delta4 Plus MR, and here I will show you a summary of that. I have to say to you that all the presented data is extracted as raw data from the Delta4 Plus Phantom. So actually, I haven't applied any software correction to that. So it's purely the raw values of the Delta4 Phantom Plus. But if you look into that raw data, you will see for all the tests that we performed, and here's the list. As you can see, it's the short-term reproducibility, the dose linearity, the dose rate linearity, the dose per pulse, the field size dependency, and the angular dependency. And if you look into the data, you can see that this is all within reasonable specs. And like I said, it's all the raw data, so there is no software correction applied to that, and then you already get this kind of results, which are pretty impressive, I think. Then I will take you shortly into what it takes to do or to make a QA plan from your Monaco treatment planning system. First of all, we start off with a clinical plan. In this case, it's a rectal plan that we treated on the Unity machine. It's just a normal plan as made by a physician. In the treatment planning system, there is already a model of the table included. So there is the bridge where the table lays on. It's the table itself, and as well as the anterior and posterior coil are over there. Because if you treat the patient in a clinical situation, those coils will be there present as well. You irradiate through them, so you have to take them into account into your planning. Then we copy over the plan to the Delta4 Phantom, and we recalculate what the dose would be in the Phantom. Due to the difference in geometry between the Phantom and the patient, you can see slightly different dose distribution from the patient or from in the Phantom regarding to the patient. Actually, the Delta4 Plus is the only commercial available Phantom which has the center of the Phantom at iso height on a Unity machine. As you can see depicted, the iso center height is 14 centimeters above the tabletop, and as far as I know at this moment, the Delta4 Plus is the only Phantom which can have the central Phantom at that height. Then we transfer by DICOM export the dose distribution into the software, as you can see depicted, and you can do your measurement. And then after the measurement, you get your results. And these are the results for a prostate plan, and it's all within specs. As you can see that your dose deviation is giving a 97.1% pass rate. Your DTA is all within the set criteria, as is your gamma index. Talking about your setting of your criteria in the software itself, you can set the criteria that you want. Normally, we treat patients or do QA on patients for a 3% and 3 millimeter criteria. But if you want, say, for instance, for a small lymph node, you would say, oh, I'm not just interested in the dose that we're giving, so I set that to 5%, but actually I want to know that we are actually good on the right spot. I'll set that at 2%, 2 millimeters. You can do that. And there is a optimized phantom position in the software included. So if you would place your phantom not in the right position, over here you can then with the optimized phantom position you can correct for that. Also, your structures you can export from your TPS system into the Delta4 system, so you can see if you found out that you do have some kind of gamma index point that is larger than 1, you can see where it is situated. This structure set is copied one-on-one from the TPS system, so it's actually a rigid transformation from the patient plan to the QA plan, so there is no deformation applied to that, but it gives you a quite good indication where it is failing or where it is not. For instance, if you would have some high dose points in your dose deviation, and it would be in your target region, actually we don't care, because the higher dose you get over there, we would say the better it is. But for instance, if you would in this case have a high dose point in your bladder or in your rectal, you would say, yeah, that's not what we want to, and we would have a look into the plan. You can make a 3D map of the whole measurement. So this is the same plan as I showed you before, and as you can see, there is an orange spot over there roughly in the center, which represents a point which is giving a gamma value larger than 1. Like I said, and in this case we didn't care about it because the green structure is DCTV, so actually this point is within your clinical target volume, and we say okay, that's okay. So those All gamma evaluation is calculated in 3D. It's not measured in 3D, it's calculated in 3D. Your measuring points are only on the plus phantom itself. Then something about the positioning of the device. It can actually be very hard to do because in Utrecht we can use a laser system, which is a non-standard Elekta solution. It's actually made by ourselves, but we can in this way position our phantom quite good, but it's still not in the place where you wanted it to be, because actually you have to move your phantom into the bore to treat it over there. But this could be very helpful in placing your phantom. Like I said, it's a UMC Utrecht solution, and it's not standard. It doesn't come standard with the Unity machine. But then some people ask me, but you do have your laser system, but what can I do, because I do not have a laser system? There is another solution on that, and my colleagues in Amsterdam, where they do have a Unity machine as well, they found out that actually you can use the EPIT megavolt imager, which comes with the Unity machine. You can use that to do positioning of devices. And then I thought, what would happen if I would take such an MV picture of a Delta4 Phantom? And as you can see on the right, this is the result if you put a 10 centimeter squared field on the Phantom and make an image of that. And when I first looked at it, I was thinking, what am I looking at? So actually, this is where in green where I placed the ISO center, so it's actually in the main board. And as you can see, there are dark gray stripes over there, and I thought, what were those? And then I counted them and I measured it, and it turned out that this is actually the high resolution area where the spacing between the diodes is around 5 millimeters. And more, as you can see, I've inserted an ionization chamber into the Phantom. It's a pharma chamber, and as you can see, you can do a quite a good measurement with a pharma chamber situated in the Phantom as well. Then something about the clinical results, and I have to say it's the clinical results up to now. And for each tumor site we already irradiated more than 10 patients. So as you can see, all the dose deviations, your DTA and your gamma pass rates are very, very good. The only thing is that, for instance, for the dose deviation of a pancreas plant, we come to average dose deviations of 94.9%, where we have set the criteria as we wanted it to be over 95%. Together with some of my colleagues, we had to look into this, and it turned out that if you have a high modulated plan, which is actually a pancreas or a liver plan, it turns out that it comes with the cost of dose deviation. So your dose deviation will drop to the high due to the high modulation of your plan, and this is because those are very small fields that you have to deliver, and it's giving a very high dose. For all the other ones, you can see as well over 95% as well for DTA and gamma pass rate. We also did some lymph node plans, and this was quite challenging because those lymph nodes, as you can imagine, those are very small. So actually you get only a few detector points where you can do your measurements on, but still then you get those deviations over 95% as well for DTA and gamma pass rate. Therefore, I have to say, for those small lymph nodes, we use a criteria of 5% 2 millimeter, where all the other ones are done with 3% 3 millimeter. Then sometimes I get questions and ask, should I buy a Delta4 Plus MR? People ask me saying, why should I do this? And then I always say, go to the commercial market and see what is there nowadays. Of course, there is that Delta4 Plus MR. And the guys from Nuclear still have their ArcCheck MR, and nowadays there seems to be an Octavius as well. And yesterday I asked about the guys from PTW what the status of that PTW Octavius is for MR, and it's still a prototype, but they probably will release it in the first half of 2021. So it's coming, but it's actually not there yet. Of course, if you have then 3 of those phantoms, you can ask yourself, but which one should I buy? And of course, we had that same discussion over here in Utrecht. And what we did ourselves was, first of all, make a list of what we think is important in the as a criteria for purchasing a phantom. So actually we looked, oh yeah, we want to use it on a Unity machine, so it has to be MR compatible. Some people found weight very important because yeah, you have to place your phantom on the table. Is angular correction, for instance, applied in the software? How easy is the calibration procedure? What's, for instance, doing with network connectivity? How easy is that done? And we in Utrecht scored for all the 3 phantoms. We made the table ourselves, and we scored with pluses and minuses, or actually in this case it's X's and V's. What we think how they should score. I have to stress out to you that this is a list made by the UMC Utrecht. So if you do this yourself, you might up with different parameters, and you might up with different scoring. So if you do this, you can end up with saying, oh yeah, but maybe with the parameters that I think are important, maybe the ArcCheck will come out superior to Delta4 MR. But if I look into the Delta4 MR Plus, it's scoring almost a V on all the parameters we've set. So then the question is the Delta4 Plus MR the perfect device? And sorry for you, Anders, but I have to say, no, it isn't. There's still some work to do, because if I look into the other phantoms, for instance, I'm able to make measurements before the TPS calculation is done, where it is still not possible on Delta 4. I've give this as feedback to the guys in Scandidos, and they already promised me that they will work on this and they will release it in a newer version of the software. So that development progress is still going on, and the same accounts for combinability with film measurements. And at that time that we scored this table, it was not possible, although on the last Astro last year I saw a poster from some people in Belgium, and they adapted the Delta4 Phantom Plus so they could base a EBT3 film in the Delta4. So yeah, it's there. So probably if we would rescore now this table, it would give a V over there as well. So is it perfect? No, it is not perfect, but we're almost there. And then if you look into the list, the only X which is still there is on the weight. But yeah, of course, no one can do something about weight. And if you look into the competitors, they all score on an X on the weight. So actually, it's not a big deal on that. Then in conclusion, Delta4 Plus MR is now available on the market. So you could purchase it if you want to. We did acceptance testing and completed it and approved it. The clinical results so far are well within the set tolerances. And like I said, I've talked now only about the acceptance and clinical results on a Unity machine. but one of my other colleagues, Timo Romaguera from the Miami Cancer Institute, does have an MRldian machine, and on the last double APM, he presented over there almost the same work as that I did for a Unity machine, but he did it on an MRldian machine, and you can download his presentations from the Delta4 Family site. So where are we at this moment, and what's keeping me busy? As said, I made a publication about the characterization of the prototype, which is still valid for the Delta4 Plus as well. And I'm now working on a white paper called Patient Treatment QA in High Field Strength MRI with the ScandiDos Delta4 Plus MR. It's work in progress, and I hope to finish this within a few weeks. Recently I gave the same or mostly the same webinar a while ago last year on the 27th and 29th of August, and as you can see that on YouTube as well. So in conclusion, I can tell you that the Delta4 Plus MR is the patient treatment QA phantom for all MR-Linacs, so not only for a Unity machine but for an MRldian as well, and therefore it's up to 1.5 Tesla doable. And at last, I have to thank some people. First of all, at ScandiDos, it's Daniel and Mikael from the development team, as well as Thomas. It's Madeline and Emily from the support department, which gave me very good support if I had questions or I ran into trouble. It's Zelga, Zelga and Anders for supporting us with the Phantom. And then it's of course Ingmar and Jürgen as the CEOs from ScandiDos, and it's Yang giving me the opportunity to give this webinar to you. And then it's my colleagues from the UMC Utrecht, which did a lot of work together with me. So in the end, I want to end with a saying, being a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I think this is very applicable to the Delta4 Plus MR, where in 2016 we, together with ScandiDos, made that single step going from a Delta4 PT to now a Delta4 Plus MR. So I want to thank you for your attention, and if you do have any questions, it's either directly now or in the future, please don't hesitate to send me an email on the below address, and you can address it directly to me or via Yang, and that's up to yourself. I want to thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Wilfred, for a very thought through and interesting presentation. We have time for questions, and we had some questions coming in previous to this webinar, but I also have some here. One question is, do you have an index solution for precise lateral displacement?
Yes, actually we do. And I know that the development team of ScandiDos is working on that. And actually this is, let me check. I will, there we go. I know that ScandiDos is working on some kind of jig to place it around the Delta4, so you can position it quite easily lateral on the table, because like said, if your high dose region is far to the left or far to the right, you have to place your phantom like that. In the meanwhile, myself, I created some plastic holders And as you can see, this holders, it's giving me a 0 offset in this case. So it's actually, and as you can see it on the left picture as well, the sagittal laser is running over the main board. So therefore this it keeps my phantom in the lateral position with no offset. And I've made the same plastic holders for 10, 5, -5 and -10 centimeters. And however, there's a disadvantage for this, because if you would place an offset in your phantom, then you have to displace or replace your phantom on another position on the table. And that gives another transmission through the table. So actually, for all the offsets you give, you have to make a new structure set in your treatment planning system, as the ISO position is set to the center of the table. So you have to shift your phantom over the table, and therefore you get, in this case, what I did in Utrecht is now I do have 5 phantoms, Delta4 phantoms within my TPS software. Hopefully this answers the question.